if you could think of one thing to have a huge impact on the maritime industry, blow up the IMO and change the way we do regulations. Where will we be in 2030? Unfortunately, probably not very far. And on to my speech. Reality has never changed as fast as it's happening today. This virus story has changed the face of the world in weeks, if not days now. It has the potential to rewrite the history books, and along with that, change the balance of the world economy. For us in maritime, this could create this maritime revolution that a lot of us have been talking about for some time. It might just be that event that we need to create real change in the maritime industry. By that, you can infer that I don't have much faith in the current digitalization story. Like the augmented reality of the world created by social media, fake news, and media misinformation, if you read the media and listen to some of the technology suppliers in the maritime industry, we're undergoing some sort of digitalization revolution. And while I accept change is happening, the story on the ground in most owners and ship managers is a far cry from the vision that you read about and that is projected by many of the technology vendors and in the media. By now, I'm sure many of you are ready to give me examples of why I'm wrong. Understand that this is my opinion based on my experience. And while I accept that there are changes, pockets of progress do not institute a revolution. My position is that we need groundbreaking change. We need an event, coronavirus, or a genius to come along and create a real difference, a true digitalization, a true revolution. Everyone tells me how traditional we are, and over 40 years I know it, but we need a revolution. Everyone likes to talk about Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Einstein, Henry Ford, etc., etc. Do you think they cared a fig for committees? Do you think they cared what governments thought? Their disruption happened in spite of, and not because of, committees. This is the very essence of what a revolution is. The words disruption, innovation, digitalization do not fit well with committees like the IMO and the organizations that support them. They are the very opposite of what organizations stand for. The history of these organizations in the development of regulations and the enforced changes in maritime operational standards prove the point. And today, with things changing in the maritime industry at lightning speed, or in the world around us at lightning speed, this is even more true. Governments and committees do not create revolutions. People do. Let's talk about sustainability, one of the topics that's coming up. Have you been on board a ship with a scrubber? Have you visited a dry dock as one has been installed? I've been on several. The measures that are put in place to prevent corrosion, the huge fiberglass pipes that go on the outflow side of an open loop scrubber to prevent corrosion to the ship's side, because steel would just be corroded through in 4 months. From my experience, and this is just in a short period, this is one dumbass thing that we've done in the maritime industry. We could talk all day about the economics of scrubbers. We could talk all day about the cost of maintenance and the ridiculous implementation of low sulfur fuels in IMO 2020. But one thing is very clear to me. It wasn't green and it wasn't sensible. There's something completely ridiculous to me that we have all these ships sailing around now on low sulfur fuel or pumping heavily corrosive liquid into the ocean while they carry millions of tons of cargo and fossil fuels to countries which will wantonly just burn it into the atmosphere. This has to be done in a much smarter way. And on top of this, We're now having this discussion about the quality of fuel that's available, or what fuel are we going to burn in tomorrow's ships? But as usual, unless something changes, we're going to stumble through this with very little leadership, and owners will be left to pick up the pieces. Where is the pragmatic leadership from the charterers, from the oil majors, and all the other so-called experts? If you read last week's trade winds, the EU is ready to step in. While I don't like the EU or the IMO, I'm very happy to see the EU come in and challenge the IMO. The IMO's made a right mess of the regulatory framework of almost everything they've touched in the last 30 years, and it's time for a change. If shipping really wants to control its own agenda, it needs to act differently. Oil majors and charterers need to develop a social conscience for a green ship. They need to pay owners more for green ships, incentivize rather than penalize. How can you build a ship today for the next 20 years when the engine, the fuel, and crew qualifications are all in doubt? Nobody actually knows what's required. Why would you even build a ship to carry oil today when everybody wants to get rid of fossil fuels? The uncertainty is just mind-blowing. My other favorite topic, human factors. As an ex-seafarer, I find it very disappointing to watch the current attitude and treatment towards seafarers. I honestly believe things have only got worse in the years since I left the sea. The environment and working conditions have not improved for the vast majority of seafarers at sea today. Some salient facts I'd want you to take away from the number of conferences that I've attended and spoken at. 20% of seafarers have considered self-harm. This is a staggering statistic, and one that we should all be ashamed of. Add to this, about 170 seafarers die every 8 weeks. 170 every 2 months. And of that, it is reckoned that somewhere between 6 and 10% commit suicide. This is a totally unacceptable situation. The industry wants to talk about safety, but figures like this suggest that we are not addressing the core requirement, a happy and safe crew. And if we don't have a happy crew, and then one is treated with respect, how can we possibly have a safe ship? It's interesting. When I was running a recent technology company, I was told by our technology guys, technology is going to replace the crew, so we don't have to consider them. I find this incredibly disturbing on so many levels. I think we are and can move towards a ship running automatically. Engine rooms do today, aircraft are also capable of it. But in both cases, they have humans involved in monitoring, and the level of training is high. It's amazing when you consider the Boeing 737 MAX events recently and the mistakes made in training and software quality control. And then we talk about what new engines, what new fuels, the introduction of complex technologies. And then we start talking, well, we're going to have an unmanned ship pretty soon. These things don't fit together. From my experience, we should and could move towards this automated operation, but it needs to be monitored by a skilled team. And this is not insignificant, we need a business case for it. Having seen the level of quality and reliability of today's marine equipment, I think that we've got a long way to go, and I'm not holding my breath until otherwise we are going to need multiple redundant systems, engines, and firefighting and safety backups. Technology. In the last 16 months since I took over at Wallem, I've been considering the technology picture from the other side of the wall. From when I ran the last 4 technology companies that I was CEO of. It makes for a very interesting discussion when I catch up with old contacts, owners, and technology companies when they visit me at Wallem. We have so much technology at our disposal, but the situation is being mishandled on so many levels. First and foremost, owners and managers are largely at a completely different stage in their evolution to some of the modern technology vendors and the stories that they spin. A large number of operators still run very basic technology platforms and have yet to embrace the full concept of technology as a complete tool for operational efficiency. Coupled with this, of course, comes the fact that products on offer are so often fragmented and not fit for purpose. Only parts of the required solution are on offer. Integration is almost always impossible, or at very best, complex. The thing that most upsets me, though, is the misinformation to owners and operators. Proper optimization of the ship operation and fuel optimization will only come when we can have machinery sensor data and the above deck data working in a proper picture of the vessel's past, current, and future voyages. Try getting a company to give you that today. Jim Pero will tell you how he does it. And then try getting it for a reasonable price. I'm working on him on that. Then try convincing your owners that this is the right way to go. I'm still working on that problem. The multiple companies, protocols, and levels of manual input that are still around make this a minefield for any owner to consider implementing. I get that suppliers want to sell, but the lack of transparency when they produce their solutions is not doing owners or the vendors any favors. So what we end up with overhyped solutions, over-confused customers, and a fragmented, stumbling progress towards modernizing our business. I have 2.5 minutes to go. I've got 5 minutes to talk. I smile when I think of loss prevention. There's a simple answer to this. Don't let the ship sail. Of course, that's not an answer or a helpful comment. But I think of loss prevention a little bit like pharmacy companies and doctors. They're there to cure the sick and not to prevent the sickness. And so goes the insurance market. True loss prevention will only come from the things I've been talking about above. Human factor training, human factor wellness, and use of the tools to reduce the risk and the chance of losses. The fact is that if premiums were reduced for those that had a high level of training and a high level of technology, then we would achieve a win for the industry and we'd have to pay less to our insurance companies. So in closing, maybe the current crisis will drive enough ships out of the market. Maybe the economic picture will change enough for a new model to evolve. Maybe the light will go on somewhere and a charterer will pay for a green ship with a fully qualified crew on a modern, connected and analytical ship. I believe the difference in the future is going to be the story of data. And the first to handle this will be the leader. I'm obviously talking about operations here because freight and trading is so far ahead of us. Tomorrow's ship is not going to be managed by today's managers. Tomorrow's ships is not going to be run in the same way. This is not a fuel efficiency story. It's about so much more. It's not about a smart route or a just-in-time arrival. It's not about a faster satellite connection or sharing data with a port on arrival. These are pretty basic elements. This is about a ship as an economical green node on the value chain, with proper tools to evaluate its productive life in the short and the long term. An ideal ship manager tomorrow will have a complete picture of the daily performance of the ship live at the same time as they manage the budget and maintenance plan live. Tomorrow's superintendents will not simply manage to an annual budget run by a superintendent who's afraid to bust the budget. The budget that was decided months ago and is the same as it was last year because the owner won't change his numbers. That is not the future. So in essence, I'm saying our attitude has to change. And this has to be from the top to the bottom. It has to be on how we view change, how we view management, and how we view technology. But most of all, we have to recognize that shipping is not special. It is not immune from the revolution. And the longer it resists, the greater the pain. If it wants to be special, it needs to reinvent itself. It needs to forget the dinosaurs that hide in their havens of denial while they sit in their committees. Thank you.